you've engaged even briefly in the fantasy of someday owning your own home and then looked at how expensive it is these days, as well as a number of other issues around there, you know that our country's got a gigantic problem when it comes to housing. And so how are the Democratic contenders in this primary going to deal with these problems? We are joined now by Pete Harrison, Senior Housing Advisor for Data for Progress, to break down some of their plans. Pete, welcome to the show.
Hey, John, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Very glad to have you here. So we are going to delve into three different candidates' housing legislation. But before we get into that, overall, why do we think that housing policy is going to be important in this primary? Are they paying attention to this time around?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you want to talk about an actual national emergency, the affordable housing crisis is that. We have virtually every county in the country does not have enough affordable housing. Half of all renters are paying too much rent per month, and homeownership rates have not recovered since the Great Recession. So this is an issue that affects renters and owners in big cities and small towns across the country. And it's frankly, we think there's a lot of political opportunity for a 2020 contender in a crowded field to have a sweeping vision for housing. And there's also the moral urgency to do so.
And I can only speak for the LA situation, but it is dire. I will say that, as well as you point out, a number of other parts. So you talked a little bit about this, about some of the issues, but in terms of looking at a comparison of these different plans, does there seem to be generally a high level of agreement about exactly what the issue is that needs to be fixed?
Yeah, I mean, great question. Short answer is no. I mean, housing is a big, wonky, not very sexy policy discussion. So I think, which is exciting, particularly early in the primary, because there are a number of ways to go about this. So I think so far the three bills that we have reviewed are coming at it from broadly different angles. I think for us at Data for Progress, there are four categories that ultimately we want to see every plan have. The first one is direct rental assistance, and that's supporting rent control measures that about half a dozen states are doing so far. Second is ending exclusionary and restrictive zoning and apartment bans, which restricts the amount of construction, particularly in wealthier communities. Three is to build more housing, whether it's subsidizing private housing for low income or ideally building more public housing. And four, ending the speculative nature of housing. I mean, Wall Street is coming in and owning single family homes and apartment buildings at a large scale. So we have to tackle that. And that really means tackling the tax code, excuse me.
So let's start with Elizabeth Warren. What are some of the highlights of her policy?
Yeah, by far of the three that we have talked through so far, she deserves a lot of credit. I think her primary focus is putting actual money into building affordable housing. She is also tackling a lot of the racist legacy of housing policy in this country by trying to get communities that have prevented housing from being constructed, from addressing communities that have been gentrified. So I think she gets a lot of credit there for having a much more holistic approach. She's not just coming at it from the rental side or the homeownership side.
And based on some of the research that's available on Data for Progress that I read in your write-up about this, for Kamala Harris, her Rent Relief Act, it seems to be sort of on the opposite end. It's specifically targeted at one of those issues that you were discussing.
Yeah, she is exclusively focusing on direct rental assistance. The Warren bill does not have anything about that. So, to credit where you're seeing a lot of pressure for renters, particularly in some of the more crowded cities like LA or New York in my case. So she is trying to figure out a way to, through the tax code, give back some of that money if you're spending more than 30% of your income on rent. The problem with that is that's not exactly how most renters budget their money. Having one tax credit come after the year is not necessarily the best way to do that. But it does speak to the issue that renters are paying too much money and it's going to landlords. Many of them are Wall Street speculators.
Yeah, and it seems like, look, certainly there are a lot of renters paying a higher percentage of their income than in the past. That obviously hurts the economy in a number of different other ways because so much of the money is going to this one unified area of it. But when you're talking about like the Wall Street and these big buyers coming in and buying up all available houses basically and doling them out very slowly, making it very difficult for people to transition out of renting an apartment into owning a home, that seems like something that's certainly worthy of attention as well.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. It's really pernicious. We've had 70 years of federal policy trying to subsidize home ownership for the middle class. And now we have massive financial institutions like Blackstone buying these single family homes because millennials can't rent them, poor people can't buy them, and millennials can't buy them. So it's the idea of taking advantage of the housing crisis, and that's a deeply pernicious issue. And so far, none of the bills of any of the senators that we reviewed so far have actually addressed that. So that's something that we're really looking forward to working with campaigns and to seeing candidates really jump on, because it's just evil.
And what about Cory Booker?
Yeah, Cory Booker's plan is a little bit of a hybrid between Senator Harris and Senator Warren. He is doing direct rental assistance just like Harris, but he is trying to address some of the more structural issues about zoning, restrictive zoning that Elizabeth Warren has done. We think given his experience as a mayor, he can speak a lot to housing. But, so far it's been a little bit about rental assistance, a little bit about more of a carrot than a stick for exclusionary zoning. So there's not a lot of teeth to it quite at this point. Okay.
Well, that's 3 early looks at their policies. Of course, there are 35 candidates, so hopefully we can have you back on in the near future to break down some more. I'm very interested in seeing Bernie Sanders in particular, what he's going to do on this. So Pete Harrison, Senior Housing Advisor for Data for Progress, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for watching this clip from the Damage Report. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell on YouTube to get notifications of our new videos. And of course, you can catch the full Damage Report live every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on TYT Network on YouTube TV.